Dear friends, yesterday on Simchat Torah, we completed the reading of Deuteronomy and returned again to the beginning, to Genesis. In this week's Sidra, Bereshit, we encounter one of the most challenging tales in the Bible, the tragic story of two brothers, which begins with expressions of ritual devotion and ends in fratricide. As the Bible tells us, Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to God. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Eternal looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering God did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Eternal said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be rewarded? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you can rule over it." Now Cain spoke to his brother Abel, and while they were out in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then God said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I do not know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Those of you who have visited Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem, may recall how prominent in the memorial stands a tribute to the righteous among the nations, non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews from Hitler's final solution. One was Imre Bathory, a Hungarian farmer who encountered a young Jewish man, Martin Wiesel, on a train attempting to evade deportation to the concentration camps. "I know that you are a Jew in trouble," Bathory reassured Wiesel. "I'll help you." He then feigned to government officials that Wiesel was his son and sheltered him and 4 other Jews in his farmhouse. When interviewed about his heroism, Bathory remarked pointedly, "I know that when I stand before God on Judgment Day, I shall not be asked the question posed to Cain, 'Where were you when your brother's blood was crying out to God?'" By design, Bathory's admonition looms over the exhibition. Every day, God demands of us what God demanded of Cain. Where are you? Where do you stand on the moral questions of the hour? We live in an age of often callous disregard for human dignity, an era in America of open hatred that demonizes anyone different. 6 years ago, Sunday, in Pittsburgh, just as we were gathering here for Sabbath services, a white nationalist entered a synagogue with an assault rifle and multiple handguns, shouted, "All Jews must die," and shot dead 11 worshipers, one of the most horrific acts of anti-Semitic violence in our nation's history. Robert Bowers, like most bigots, was an equal opportunity hater. His loathsome rhetoric targeted Muslims and refugees too. Tides of intolerance had been surging in America long before that awful day. But statisticians have pointed to a marked increase in hate crimes since the 2016 presidential campaign, which featured much of the same rhetoric as this one, including the scapegoating of immigrants to stoke fear. In his final memoir, the late Senator John McCain described the dehumanization of immigrants and asylum seekers as the exploitation by opportunists of old fears and animosities that have blighted American history. And Bernard Marx, a survivor of both the Auschwitz and Dachau concentration camps, added, "The fear that immigrants in the United States live with is personal and familiar to me. I cannot forget the day the special police came to the door of our home in Poland and took my father away. And I feel compelled to raise my voice when I hear echoes of my childhood." We should all feel so compelled when we hear echoes of the darkest days of modern history, as we have in White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly's recount of his former boss's admiration of Adolf Hitler and envy of Hitler's military authority. The New York Times story might have been difficult to accept at face value were it not backed up by another in The Atlantic, and had the former president not demonstrated a similar affinity for other global strongmen, and had he not spoken about turning the United States government on those he considered his enemies. In the wake of General Kelly's comments, the news outlets have taken to debating what constitutes a fascist. But as Yale historian Timothy Snyder notes, open hostility to fact, designation of truth by proclamation, repetition of lies, and demands for trust do recall the European authoritarianism of 100 years ago. And in The Origins of Totalitarianism, Nazi refugee and political philosopher Hannah Arendt warned, "The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is a people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, true and false, no longer exist." It was the public's own lack of discernment that enabled the totalitarian elites of the 20s and 30s to manipulate truth. They rejected reason, adds Snyder, in favor of a glorious myth articulated by leaders who claimed to give voice to the people, put a face on globalization, and argued that its complex challenges were the result of a conspiracy against the nation. We Jews have ridden this train, so we must let others know where brakeless it can lead. It is not my job to tell anyone who to vote for, and I never would. It is my job to raise what I believe are issues of Jewish moral concern, whether that means addressing the increasing tendency on the left to treat Israel as a political liability instead of as a strategic ally, or the rhetoric of the right that has contributed to the perjuring and coarsening of America. For many of us, this is a perplexing historic moment as we try to discern against the clatter and the noise and the hubbub, as we try to discern the call of conscience. But as the Torah reminds us in words we read 2 weeks ago, Yom Kippur morning, this commandment which I enjoin upon you this day is not too hard for you, nor too remote. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up for us to heaven and bring it down to us that we may do it? Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross the sea for us and bring it over to us that we may do it? No, it is near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, and you can do it. Scholars attribute those words from Deuteronomy to King Josiah, his admonition to a generation like ours, which had also lost its way. A New Yorker cartoon encapsulated their reproof in a single frame. Moses is standing atop Mount Sinai looking dejected and bewildered. They broke all the commandments, he says to God. Can they please have some more? We don't need more. The ones we have are sufficient. And when it comes to rights and wrongs, we know them well. But as the great cellist Pablo Casals once said, it takes courage for us to listen to our own goodness and act on it. That is what this new year demands of us. Together, may we have the courage to listen to our own goodness and act on it, so that when God calls us to account, as God does every day, asking us, where are you and where do you stand, we will answer with conviction and confidence in the values that have guided us. May this new year, 5785, be for each of us a year of health and joy, and for our country, a year of prosperity and peace. Amen.